Hey, good morning, Elevate. Got a question for you. How much is Jesus worth to you? The question comes to my mind after reading this morning's quiet time passage. It's in Matthew 26, verses 1 through 16. It goes like this. Jesus is getting close to the moment of his death, and he knows it's coming. He knows he's going to be crucified. So that means he knows that it's coming from the hands of the Romans. And at that very same moment, the Jewish religious leaders are plotting amongst themselves, how can we take this guy down? How can we come to kill him? In these last days, he chooses to visit his friend Simon. The Bible mentions in passing that he was a leper, or he had been before Jesus. And there he's gathering and fellowshipping with those that he loves. And this woman, who is unnamed in this passage, comes and takes an alabaster jar of oil and pours it out on Jesus' feet. As just a symbol of worship, that he is valuable to her. She pours out something precious of hers just to give him praise. The disciples watching are disgusted, are taken aback, are shocked, saying, that's too much. Why such waste? Why such extravagance? And you can see that contrast there between this woman who says, no, this isn't even good enough. It's only for his feet. And the disciples that say, well, you could have sold that and done a lot of good with it. You could have given it to the poor. Interesting contrast. But for one disciple, it was too much. Judas, at that moment, the scriptures tell us, it seems he determined in his heart to betray Jesus and went and sold him to the Pharisees, agreeing to betray him for just a few pieces of silver. So it's hard to know what 30 pieces of silver and what this alabaster jar would be worth in our day, but I'm not the first one to think about it. Other Christians have, and according to a quick Google search, our best guesses are this. Now, what this woman poured on the feet of Jesus as a sign of her worship was probably worth more than $54,000 in today's currency. Now, in contrast, Judas, who had traveled with Jesus for over 3 years, had been called his friend, had seen him do miracles, had walked with him and been in all the right places, betrayed him for what was probably just about $600 today. It's interesting to consider that question. What is Jesus worth to me? Or what is worth giving up Jesus for me? This woman got it. She understood that she had found the most precious thing in the world and that no gift she could give would be too great. So she gave the greatest thing that she could find and said, I realize this isn't enough, but out of love, out of adoration, I give this to you. And here Judas says, hey, for a while I thought this was for me. A while this sounded neat, but then you started to change the narrative and you started to make it something that I wasn't interested in, and I'm out. And I just want to cash out, and it doesn't really matter how much I can get. I'm willing to stab you in the back. A couple things that stood out to me in this passage. The first is always just an apologetic one. It's interesting to me, assuming this is a reliable source, which I believe it to be, Jesus predicted his death. Another evidence that he was who he claimed to be, that he was God. He knew it was coming, and not even that it was coming, how it was coming. It was coming at the hands of the Roman. Something pretty incredible, because he didn't really have many enemies in Rome. As you get to the crucifixion, you can tell that some of the ruling governors at this point in time didn't really even know much about who Jesus was. But the Pharisees did. If the Pharisees were going to execute someone, it was way more likely that it was going to be stoning, but still Jesus says, no, I'm going to be crucified. Pretty incredible that Jesus was God. He knew it was coming, and yet he chose to go forward and not to stop it. Now, this question that I started with is the one that I'm kind of chewing on today. What is Jesus worth to me? It's painted in our lives in a bunch of ways where we answer that question. How do we spend our moments? How do we spend our days? How do we esteem him with our lives? And I think that's worth thinking about. There are a million ways that we can point to this. What are we willing to give up for Jesus? Is there anything that we're willing to give up Jesus for? It's worth thinking about. This man, who was greater than any other, came and gave up what was most precious in all-time reality, himself, for you, for me, that we might be free, and that we might be free to know him and to be with him. He has given us the greatest gift. How do we respond to that? I think about how to give worship is just to ascribe worth to something. You can hear it in the word worthship. How are you valuing Jesus today? What kind of price tag are you putting on him? What kind of price tag am I putting on him? With our time, with our efforts, with our adoration and praise, with our choices? What do we say of his value? Today, I encourage you, set a high value on Jesus. He is worth it. And avoid the spirit of Judas that says, as long as it's useful to me, I'm ready to go along. But as soon as it gets too hard, as soon as he changes the narrative, as soon as he asks too much, I'm out. And I'm willing to betray him to get whatever I can out of it. That's the thought. Quiet time, Matthew 26, 1 through 16. Encourage you. What did you think of the passage today? Let us know. Got any questions? Got any observations? Let us know in the comments. Remember, we are encouraging you to share your quiet time. Your quiet time isn't really done until you share it with somebody. So, love you guys. Praying for you. Take care.